Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for the 11th episode of YCP's virtual monthly series, Refiner's Fire. Every month, Catholic business leaders from diverse industries share professional and spiritual wisdom with us, all in short 30-minute live sessions. And in spite of the short length of these sessions, we hope that the wisdom and tips that are shared will be really valuable for all of us as we strive to work and witness for Christ. The name of our micro interview series actually comes from scripture, Refiner's Fire from Malachi, where we learn that God is like a refiner's fire who seeks to purify us and make us the best we can be. And that's the whole point of this series. Through the inspiration and wisdom of these exceptional Catholic leaders, we hope to be challenged to improve in small ways in our professional and spiritual lives, so that in everything we do it aiming for that higher standard of glory, higher standard of excellence that gives glory to God. So our topic this month is Stress Stinks, Faith Works. We've all been stressed, both personally and professionally, especially over the last year and a half with this pandemic. Stress can really negatively impact the way that we treat others and even affect our ability to do our work well. But our faith can help us manage and overcome stress because we know that we're never alone, that God is with us and He can strengthen us and really take care of us in times of trial. And I can't think of a better person to speak on this topic than Rob Hays, the CEO of Ashford Hospitality Trust. Rob has nearly 2 decades of business experience operating and growing companies, and he has about 15 years of real estate experience. Welcome, Rob. We are so honored to have you here today.
Hey, great to be here, Jen. Happy to be a part of it.
You're not stressed out today, I hope.
Today, we're having a great day today.
Oh, good. Well, let's just jump right in. We know that the hotel industry was one of the hardest hit during the pandemic. And so you, more than anyone, probably know what it's like to have experienced significant stress. Can you tell us what you were going through personally and professionally at that time?
Sure. Yeah, it was unlike anything I could have planned for. We went through a very difficult time years ago through the financial crisis. I mean, that was a terrible experience, and our industry got hit pretty hard. And to give some perspective, our properties were down. So we own Hiltons and Marriotts and whatnot over the country. Our revenues for the financial crisis dropped 20%, I think was what they dropped, which is significant. Well, as we were, this was unfolding in April, I guess first quarter of last year, our properties dropped 95%.
Oh my goodness.
So the revenues went to literally zero. And so in April of last year, we applied for PPP loans as a company. We're a public company, and we became the poster child of a campaign kind of maligning us in the media. So that was fun. We let go. We had over 10,000 people that work across our hotels and properties, of which we let go or furlough over 9,000 of them.
Wow.
So we dropped our headcount by over 90%. And then all of our properties have mortgage loans like on your home, and all of those went in default. And it was at that moment when all that happened that I was asked to become the CEO of the company, because our previous CEO decided to move on to other items. So so it was something where it really was everything possible was going wrong. And that was the moment I had to take the reins of the company. And so I'm as you've known me for years, I'm a fairly easygoing person, and I tend to roll with the punches pretty well. But this was the first time that I'd ever dealt with panic attacks, with crushing anxiety, with high blood pressure, things that I had never dealt with before. But it was because I was, as my father once said, staring into the abyss of looking at what does it mean to potentially lose everything that you've worked for, your company, your business, everything from a monetary and wealth and business standpoint. And so that's what the last 18 months has been about.
What I just can't believe is how you've shared all this with such a smile in a way, because I mean, it sounds absolutely agonizing. But, I think that's why we're excited to talk to you today, that clearly, you have learned from this experience and, now know how to kind of be at peace, I think, from it. I mean, can you talk a little bit more just about how it impacted all aspects of your life, even maybe personal? I mean, I'm sure it would just kind of colored every aspect, right?
It did, and the hardest part I think was trying to keep it from negatively impacting my faith and my
Mhm,
spiritual life, my
mhm,
family life. So, as you know, I'm very happily married. I have a beautiful
mhm.
wife and 6 kids, all of which are from 16 to 3, mix of boys and girls. And so, not only do I have my responsibilities as a CEO, trying to figure out how to navigate our business through this unprecedented situation, but how do I maintain a healthy relationship with my spouse? Because that was under stress and strain, and,
Mm,
and then with my children who are going through, all of a sudden they're doing school from home, away from their friends, their own kind of fear, going through something that's unprecedented, and trying to navigate all that. And frankly, it was very, very difficult. I mean, there were many
mhm.
nights where I was up, I couldn't sleep, and my wife has she would sometimes wake up because we have Nest cameras all around our house, and there were many times where I'd be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, my heart and mind racing, and all I knew what to do was to frankly pick up my rosary and
Yeah.
just start walking around the house until I got tired. And so my wife would, I'd come home from work that next day and she'd say, I looked on the cameras and you were up from 2 to 3 last night
Wow.
praying. And I was like, well, I didn't know what else to do.
You.
And so it definitely was it was a significant strain on me personally. I mean, I actually recently went to a checkup to get my annual physical,
Mm.
and my blood pressure has come down quite a bit. But the doctor was explaining to me that from his perspective, that I was more or less on the backside of PTSD. All right, of
Wow.
that it was going to take a while for my body to even get back to a more normal level, just given the anxiety and stress of going through this past year. So
Unreal.
it impacts you in a significant way.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about that, about the faith aspect, because I would imagine that it was a significant way that you overcame the stress. I mean, you
Mhm.
said there was nothing else you could do. At YCP, we believe that our faith has to influence every aspect of our lives, and that does include how we manage stress. There's quotes out there. There's the famous Padre Pio quote, pray, hope, and don't worry. How did your faith help you during this really intense time? I mean, was it something that sort of was something you could rely on and anchor, or was it in a sense a way that you could really kind of navigate and pinpoint stress areas? I mean, how did your faith help?
Right. Well, I think the first point is that it it helps ground your fundamental identity,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the part that many of us really struggle with, and I know I have, is you put your identity in what you achieve
Mm-hmm.
and what you do and what people perceive about you. And so, as someone who is trying to have a company not completely go bankrupt, and having thousands of jobs uh, that were going to be going in different directions depending upon the decisions you make, it was a tremendous amount of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But um, I had to rest in the idea that my fundamental identity was on being in my case, a son of God,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that God's love for me and His acceptance of me is not kind of born upon the outcome of all this, right?
Right.
Whether the company came out and flourished or the company completely crashed and burned, uh, that didn't have an impact on who I was in the eyes of God. And
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously great examples of saints who had a willingness to let things that they created be taken away if that is the will of God. I mean, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
have a great devotion to Saint Jose Maria,
Yeah.
and there was a time where he was going through a significant persecution of the early days in Opus Dei, and there were times where he actually prayed that, Lord, if this is not of your will, take it away
Wow.
and destroy it. And I think that's a certain amount of freedom that comes from remembering that this is my fundamental identity, and what else happens, that won't change. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was a big part of it. And then I think the other part was, when you're dealing with situations of serious stress and anxiety and uncertainty, you have to have kind of your habits of piety and prayer life deeply embedded, because it's not
Yeah.
until they're tested that you
Mm-hmm.
know if they're real. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you have a goal of trying to make it to mass every day, or in this case, for a lot of this year was like, even if it's just, digital mass,
Yes.
but having the habits of praying your rosary, of doing mental prayer, of doing spiritual reading, of doing examination of conscience, of trying to get to the sacraments of confession, if you're not living those when times are relatively easy, you are definitely not going to do it if your time is stressed. And so one of the great things and the fortunate, I guess I've been fortunate to get a lot of great formation
Mm-hmm.
in my life. And that's what kind of stood that the pressure was. And honestly, frankly, it made it easier because
Mm-hmm.
I knew that if I didn't pray today, and turn these things over to God and trust Him for this, I was going to have a panic attack. I was going
Wow.
to be overwhelmed and not be able to function. And so so anyway, you've got to have that foundation built in now, so that you can handle it when it comes.
I think that's such great advice. And, we spoke about this earlier. We started this Refiner's Fire series in January with Harry Kramer on the
Mm-hmm.
topic of being proactive versus reactive. And I think what you're saying is we have to actually be proactive with our prayer life, kind of to lay that foundation, to develop that habit so that when we are in these times of challenge and trial, we have something to pull from. We're not,
That's right.
pulling from zero. So I think that's such great advice. Especially as kind of we're entering into this Advent season, right? This can be this time of laying that foundation if we feel like we don't have it already. Rob, in addition to prayer that you spoke of, availing of the sacraments, what other practical things can we do to kind of help manage stress in our life?
Sure. Absolutely. No, and we've talked about this before, you and I offline, but we actually at Ashford right now are taking a group of people through a program called Optimal Work that a friend
Mm-hmm.
of mine, a guy named Dr. Kevin Majors, who's at Harvard, teaches. And he's a clinical psychiatrist. And he deals with people that deal with anxiety and depression. And he's formulated this program. And it's been great to go through this thing with a bunch of my friends and peers and associates at our company, because what what I've learned through this program is that people can get overwhelmed because they see the totality of everything that they have to do, and they
Mm-hmm.
have all of these uncertainties about what's going to come. When there's really two things that need to be done. I mean, one is what he calls reframing the situation, where
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to advance in any sort of virtue, or in any aspect of your life, it's only through a challenge that we learn. And
Mm.
so one thing is when a situation comes at you, is you've got to see it as an opportunity to grow. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
run from it, or you procrastinate, or you delay it, it builds up and it builds up and builds up, right? The only way to get over a phobia or a fear is to walk right up to it.
Yep.
And so that's something that we have to do, is almost seek and be thankful and grateful for these opportunities and challenges. So, and then the next aspect that is, I think, very important, is that you have to break these things down into very specific, tangible next steps, right? Because if you say, "Oh my gosh, I have these 6 projects, and this problem I'm having with my friends, and this conflict with my parents," and
Mm-hmm.
you start, it just piles and piles and piles, and so it seems insurmountable.
Mm-hmm.
When realistically, what you need to do is sit down and write, okay, here's this project. What is the next thing I need to do to advance the
Mm-hmm.
ball? And when do I need to do it by? And you
Mm-hmm.
do that. And so instead of 20 things, 20 projects that are overwhelming you, you just have 20 to-dos by a certain time and date. And then you just go execute. And when you get to those, then you do it again. And so you're breaking it down into smaller pieces,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're not paralyzed in fear and stress and anxiety. And so when you combine this attitude of challenge and
Yeah.
growth and virtue, because this is who I want to become,
Mm-hmm.
along with the practical reality of, and all I have to do that is just one more little step.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very powerful combo of how to manage, because then what happens is that you then make progress. And
Yes.
as you make progress, your anxiety level starts coming down and it becomes more manageable. And that's what, I mean, he talks a lot about, how do you get someone to overcome a fear of, say, heights? Well, what you do is you walk them out to the edge of a building and you stay there. And what they find is that they're freaking out, and then the fear kind of kind of falls a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the next time you go out there, it doesn't go as high, and then it falls a little bit more. And then you just keep doing that. And over time, you realize it wasn't a big deal. And so that's what you have to do when you're feeling this anxiety, is you have to face it head on and see it as an opportunity for growth, break it into next steps to do, and then do that over and over again. And it kind of starts fading away.
It's so true, and it's simple, but sometimes I think we can get caught into this web of this stress, and in a sense, it almost becomes like an indulgent thing, a self-serving thing, because it takes humility to step back and say, this isn't all about me. God has given me the tools to, sort of break this down so that I can serve and love others. So it's interesting to think about it in that way too. And then in a sense, we're moved to action, like you said, right, and kind of complete those small steps.
Well, and you just said something that was really important, Jen, which is putting it at the service of others, because it's not just about who do I want to become, right? How do I become a saint and live as a saint and grow in these virtues? But what's also a very powerful aspect of it is when you see these trials as a benefit to others, whether, if I become more generous as a man, that's a benefit to my children and my spouse. But then if I really, really don't want to do something, that ability to say, I'm going to do this, and it's for this prayer intention or the sake of someone else, that's even a higher ideal that makes it even that much easier to kind of withstand whatever kind of pain or anxiety or discomfort that comes from doing a task that you don't really like.
Yes.
You're called to be a hero in this little task in this moment. And if you're doing that and getting that habit, you break through. You'll absolutely do it for the sake of others.
Oh, what a great reminder for us. So just for our audience, we are taking questions soon from Rob, so please be typing them into the chat. Rob, I'm just thinking about you now. You're literally at the top of the business world, top echelon. You see a lot in terms of young workers today, what they're going through. Are you noticing anything in terms of this topic of stress in young workers, that maybe stress is higher among young workers and preventing them from kind of reaching that next level professionally? What are you noticing, and what advice do you have for us?
Yeah, it's something I definitely see, and it is heightened stress, but mostly fear.
Oh.
I mean, I think I see fear, whether it's fear of failure, obviously, in this, recently it's kind of fear of getting sick, but it is I think it's a real concern that we see, because, the reality is that young people today, in many ways, have more opportunities in front of them than has ever existed in the history of time, right? With the advent of technology and the amount of information that's available to learn and the resources that are out there, young people are better positioned to grow and have more tools than ever. And yet that doesn't seem to be what you experience. Is that I think there's a lot of fear. And I think one of it's just kind of a fear of failure, and not realizing that failure is really good. Failure is one of the best ways to teach and learn. And again, it doesn't have an impact on your identity of who you fundamentally are, but it is how we learn. For whatever reason, God wired us to learn more from our failures than our success. And so I do think it's something where, for younger people and like the younger associates in our company, that I wish that they were more comfortable in that, and as well as we feel more comfortable to communicate, because I do think there's a fear that if they admit to their fears or concerns, that they're going to somehow be seen as weak or inadequate, when reality that's how we interact as humans, and how as someone who's trying to form young people and form people coming up in the business, I need to know what the state of affairs is. I need to know what you're struggling with, so that I can help give guidance. Maybe I can learn something. And so I think that kind of openness and communication is going to be a big part of it as well.